Thank you for joining us here at Tax Talk UK, where we talk about all things tax and other important aspects to consider when you're working for yourself. So today I'm going to talk about who you take advice from, specifically what you should do with the advice that you hear in the pub. Before I talk about that, if I could please ask you to take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll easily be able to refer back to this information if you need to, as well as being able to find other information that we have on a whole wide range of topics. And if you want to be notified as we upload new information, then please do turn on the notifications. So taking advice then from your mate in the pub, this is it's not necessarily your mate in the pub, but this is an issue that most in the profession engaged to support the self-employed have difficulties with. And it's really important when you have advice from somebody or if they give you information to actually check out whether that information is correct. So quite often a bookkeeper will hear, no, I am able to claim that because my mate in the pub told me to, or that another worker that I've been working on this job told me that they have always claimed it. So this can be problematic, but what is more problematic is if you take that kind of information, that kind of idle chit chat as proper advice, which of course it isn't. So some things to think about if somebody's told you that they do claim something that you don't think that you should be able to, is for a start, when you're submitting a self-assessment tax return, it is just that. It is self-assessment. It's for you to calculate your income and your expenses to HMRC, and that is the basis for your the calculation of your liability. And then you don't send it to HMRC, but of course you must have all of the evidence to support all of the expense claims that you've made against your sales to determine your profit level. But just because that tax return has been submitted and you've been sent a statement and have made the payment, it doesn't mean anybody at HMRC has looked at those expenses and said, yes, that's okay. They're all correct. For a start, if you're under the VAT threshold and you're only completing the short self-employment section of the self-assessment tax return, you only put a total of the expenses. So it wouldn't be until such time that a person had an inspection by HMRC that HMRC would actually look at what at the calculations and what is included in those expenses to be able to say, no, that isn't correct, that isn't allowable under the current rules. And then of course they've then got to pay the extra tax. If they've claimed VAT on that, they've got to pay the VAT. And of course HMRC, dependent on how culpable they think that you've been, determines how far back they can go and take out of those expenses. So particularly if they felt that there was any fraudulent elements, then they can go back quite far historically. So you could end up by claiming the wrong things with a very big tax bill that spans lots of years, rather than just paying the actual liability that you are due to pay on an annual basis, and being able to know that you have correctly claimed expenses, so your profit is correct, and that in the event of an inspection that you don't have anything to worry about. So that's the first thing to say, is that just because someone else has claimed things for a long time doesn't mean that they are allowable. It just means it hasn't been identified that they're incorrectly calculate, including these expenses. The other important thing is that that person may have an advisor that's carrying out their bookkeeping, and they may not be accounted for as the person thinks. It may be that they've given the receipts for that item to their advisor, and their advisor has explained that they can't be allowable expenses. They're not wholly and exclusively for the purpose of business, and that person's not actually taken that on board, and the information could be confused. And then, of course, there's the fact that you aren't that person's advisor. You're not seeing their accounts. You're not seeing what makes their accounts. So you only got what they're telling you. And that's not to say, I'm not suggesting that your friend in the pub or the person that you work with is telling you a lie. But, you know, sometimes when people are chatting, they may not fully understand, or they may exaggerate. But in any case, another common thing is to question a tax liability and compare that with somebody else's. But of course, everybody's situation is unique and individual. There's a lot of complexities in working for yourself. So unless unless you're very, very sort of like similar in every aspect of your workings, which we're all slightly different in our business operations, it's unlikely that you could know actually my tax is wrong because somebody else has paid more or somebody else has paid less. Of course, that is if you think that your tax isn't correct, then you should always look into that in more detail. But if there is anything that you're not sure, you should go to gov.uk if you're looking online for the information, and or if you look on gov.uk and you're still not sure, then perhaps you should be engaging the services of a professional bookkeeper to carry out your accounting, or at least to support you with it, because it is so important that the costs that you are claiming are correctly claimed, and you're not claiming things that you shouldn't be, because that can be a very expensive mistake to make. And of course, if you are engaging somebody's services to help you, please do make sure that they're qualified for the services that you're engaging them for, that they're a member of a professional body if applicable, and that they have insurance. And try to get some personal recommendations, but particularly with things like bookkeeping and accounting, just be mindful that unless someone has a problem, then and something's come to light, then you should also carry out your own due diligence, such as checking the professional body and checking that they have insurance, asking to see the certificate. So hopefully that this has been helpful, and hopefully this helps to understand why you shouldn't necessarily take as gospel everything that you hear in the pub. As I mentioned earlier, please do take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Goodbye.